Hello guys! Today I would like to start a little series on the Bogoljubov defense. And the way to play this is against d4. You can start with the move knight to c6. Strange looking move, but you are trying to provoke pawn to d5, and this could potentially lead to some really cool and fun positions. But unfortunately, most of your opponents are going to play like standardly, and they will go for pawn to c4 in most cases. So in today's video, I would like to start looking at the positions which are reachable by following the most played moves by white. I think that's a good way to start this series. So here I recommend you to continue with knight to f6, getting your knight out first. And most common reply here is knight to c3. You can continue with pawn to d5. And actually, well, in this position, if they would go for bishop to g4 right away, you can get the Morpheus defense with knight to e4. You can check my video out that I made a couple of months ago. But if you look at the Lichess database, the most common way to continue for white here is to put knight to f3. So after this, I recommend you to continue with pawn to e6. And only in this position, most played move here is bishop to g5. So this is the position that I want to be looking at today. By the way, if you don't for some reason like your first move, knight to c6, you can get this exact same position with some other move order, and you can start with d5, e6, and you get the point. Anyways, this is the move order that I like, and after bishop to g5, I recommend you to continue with pawn captures on c4. In this position, there are two major moves that white is going to be playing. It is pawn to e3 or pawn to e4. Both of these moves come with a clear threat of capturing back the pawn with their bishop, which is like a typical theme in the Queen's Gambit, but there is a difference. So let's start with pawn to e3. Here I recommend you to continue with knight to a5, a greedy move trying to hold on to your pawn advantage. And well, in this position, the most correct way to continue for white is to play knight to e5 and trying to win the pawn back this way. But it is not really played that often. More often, or like by far the most common way to continue here for white is to play queen to a4 check. You kind of are asking for this move after playing knight to a5. Because it looks like a tactic that should be winning some material for white. But let's talk about it later. Let's just quickly have a look at the correct variation, which is knight to e5. Here you can actually play a funny kind of a gambit, or how to call this. Oops. c6 is the move that you should play, but I would recommend you to continue with pawn to b5. And the point of this move is, yes, you are protecting your c4 pawn, but you are kind of hanging your b5 pawn and they can capture with their knight. But after rook to b8, there are just so many opportunities for white to go wrong in this position that I think this variation would require another separate video for itself. But maybe I'll just try to elaborate on the Lichess study in these variations. Unfortunately, quite frankly, not so many players are going to come up with the correct continuation and play knight to e5. What usually they will play here is queen to a4 check. With this move, well, they are threatening the knight, the pawn, and it is a check. And you are going to solve all of your problems with a simple pawn to c6. Now your knight is protected. It is no longer a check, and actually this pawn is not capturable, which is what most guys here are going to blunder, because bishop captures on c4 is the most played move here. which walks into a fork after pawn to b5. So that's cool. Just know this. Now they are forced kind of to capture this pawn with either their bishop or their knight, because they want to at least capture some pawns before one of their pieces is going to die. And if they capture with the bishop, yeah, you can happily just grab this bishop. It doesn't matter if they give this check, because you can block it with your light square bishop. Your knight is still protected with the queen and you are just up a piece. But if they capture with their knight, just don't grab this knight with your pawn. This is not a good move, and now the position would be super winning for white after bishop captures with check. Because you can block this with your bishop, but now knight comes to e5 and things are going to be terrible for you. You will suffer. So don't do that. If you see knight capturing on b5, just know that you need to first get rid of this bishop and capture the bishop with your knight. After this, no matter what they do, actually I believe most guys capture this knight, and this is now like -7 super winning for black in this position. Alright, so that's cool that the most played here move is a blunder with capturing the pawn on c4. Then the secondary move is bishop captures on f6. The point of bishop capturing on f6 is that you are not able to recapture back with your queen, because your queen needs to be guarding this knight. So you would have to capture with your g-pawn, which makes your structure a little bit, worse, because now you have doubled pawns on the f-file, doubled pawns on the c-file. So white could be like happy with this, but you don't really have to capture this bishop. If they play bishop captures on f6, now you have the opportunity to play for a trap that has never been played for. And you can actually play queen to b6. So the big point of this trap is that, they just captured a piece and you are just letting them to get away with it, right? And they can move their bishop somewhere back and they will be fine, right? Well, that's not the case, because you are now on this pawn, and capturing this pawn would really hurt them badly. Let's just see what happens if they move the bishop away. First of all, if you ask the engine, it is recommending not to move the bishop away, but to simply take measures to protect this pawn. And it doesn't matter what they play to save it. They can play like rook to b1, they can get long castled, they can play queen back to c2. Simply anything that protects the b-pawn will be better for white. And after that, let's say rook to b1, now you can happily capture this bishop back, and well, the life will continue from here with them having like a slight advantage or something like that. But if they will greedily move their bishop back, now it's hard to tell what are they going to be doing, because nobody ever played for this trap. But if they put the bishop back, I would say they would most likely go to h4 or maybe e5. There is a little bit of a difference. So if they would move the bishop back to e5, you can now grab the b-pawn, so you are threatening the rook, also threatening the knight. Both of these pieces are unprotected, and white has only one good move here, and it is not to save the rook. Actually, they need to let go of the rook. They simply have to capture this knight on a5, allowing us to play bishop to b4, and now they are cooked. They cannot even save their queen. If they would try to move the queen out of the danger, we can grab this knight with a check, and this is like -14 or something like that. It's almost forced checkmate, and they will have to give up some more material to survive longer. What the engine here is recommending for white is to just give the queen for the bishop, and this way we have a queen for 3 pieces, and this is like winning for black like -2 or something like that. So I would take that. But this only works if they put the bishop on e5. Let's go back. So we just allowed them to capture our knight. We moved queen to b6 instead of recapturing the bishop. What if they would place the bishop to h4? Well, once again, we are going to grab the b2 pawn, threatening the knight and the rook at the same time. And once again, they have the only move, which is to capture the knight on a5. And after this, we are now not able to place our bishop to b4, because then queen to d8 would be actually a checkmate. Notice how this bishop of theirs stayed on this diagonal, so we cannot do that. What we are going to do here instead is we are going to capture the rook with the check. And now once again their only move is to bring this knight backwards to block this check. If they would lurk out their king to one of these two squares, that would be once again winning for black. And I believe the reason is that we will be able to bring our queen back to the b file, which is important. And once we deal with this checkmate threat, with I think pushing this pawn, we will be once again able to bring our bishop to b4 with some deadliness. So that's why they have to block this check with their knight. And now our priority is first to, solve this problem of them threatening a checkmate. But it's easy, we can just push this b pawn. Now they are likely to go queen to a4 to threaten this fork. But once again, we just simply push our pawn forward to block the queen. So they will most likely come back to renew the threat of the checkmate. But now we can block the dark square bishop with our pawn. And well, now the engine is saying that this position is equal. We have rook for 2 pieces, but we also have 2 pawns. And that's why I think we have advantage in this position, because look at this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns against this one little pawn. So I believe what we would like to do to win this game is to trade as many pieces as possible, preferably trade the queens first somehow, and after that just march our pawns on the queen side. And we should be winning, we should be promoting at some point in the future, and life will be good. So that's why I think this trap has some potential of working nicely, whether they put their bishop to h4 or e5. But you can avoid all of this if you don't like this. Let's go back. You don't have to play for this trap with queen to b6. You can simply just capture this bishop with your g-pawn, damage your pawn structure a little bit, but in reality, black is winning like 60% of the games from now. And in this position, the most correct continuation for white is to push pawn to b4, but most likely they are going to play bishop to e2. Well, wait, wait a minute, no. Actually, the most played move is a blunder here with capturing bishop, the capturing on c4 with the bishop, which walks back into this fork which we discussed earlier. Yeah, so so if you want to statistically have more winning chances, you just grab this bishop with your pawn and you hope that they will grab the pawn on c4 with their bishop, walk into a fork. But otherwise, if they continue with bishop to e2, you are now allowed to play pawn to b5, kick the queen away and have like a funny pawn structures, but the game should be like equal from here. Maybe white will have like a slight advantage. But if they play the correct move, which is pawn to b4, there is another trap that you can play for. You can capture en passant, they will capture back with their pawn, and here you can play pawn to b5, threatening the queen, and they might be like, well, isn't this just a free piece right here? Because now I am doubled on the a file, and you can go ahead, capture my queen and get hit with bishop to b4. Now once again, black is winning because they cannot save both of these pieces, and if they save the rook, which is what they should do, you can grab this knight and it is a check. And well, once again, you have these pawns nicely supporting each other, and it will give you a winning advantage in the end game. Alright guys, I'm not going to be able to cover all the variations. We need to go back because we have so much more work to do, but feel free to mess around with the Liche study that I will link below in the description. Let's now go all the way back to the initial position, or you know what, let's just remind ourselves what happened. Yeah, so we went for the Bogoljubov defense. Our opponent played c4, we developed our second knight, they developed their knight, we developed our pawn to d5, and they played knight to f3. So here we continued with pawn to e6, and they played bishop to g5. So this is all following the most played moves. Here we captured the pawn on c4, and we've been looking at what happens after the most common move, which is pawn to e3, and the secondary most common move is pawn to e4. So now let's just focus on these variations, but they are going to be maybe kind of similar at some points. But for the sake of the length of this video, let me just quickly show you all the traps that arise from this position. So after pawn to e4, now it is not considered a good move by the engine, but it is considered a good move by me, which is not much. But I recommend you to continue still with knight to a5. So greedily holding on to your pawn advantage. Why is this not considered good by the engine? Well, they need to find this winning combination, which is highly unlikely that they will. But if they play queen to a4 check here, and you block it with your c-pawn, now they can follow it up with pawn to b4, threatening your knight. You can capture en passant, they can recapture the pawn, and here you can play pawn to b5, threatening the queen. And here they need to follow it up with knight captures on b5. So this is now winning for white. It is like +2, and you cannot grab this knight back because of bishop captures on b5 check. And well, we actually have looked at this position. You can block this, but knight comes to e5 and you are cooked. So what you have to do is not to grab this knight, but place your bishop on the d7 to, you know, kind of block this diagonal, or I don't know. But they are not very likely to play this, and if they decide to grab this seemingly free horse of yours in this position, well, guess what? Then you can hit them with the old trap that we also looked at, with bishop b4 in the end, and this is actually winning for black once again. It's basically the same position as before, but this trade didn't happen, and this pawn is on e5 instead of, on e4 instead of e3. You get it, right? So let's go back. Actually, they are not even likely to play queen to a4 check in this position, because once they played pawn to e4, they have in mind the move pawn to e5, and applying the rule pp on the pp put pressure on the pinned piece. So by far, after knight to a5, the most played move here is just pawn to e5, trying to utilize this rule. Well, but this is not the strongest continuation, and actually we will have an opportunity to get them in the traps. So here I recommend you to continue with pawn to h6, so kind of neutralizing their threat of winning a piece by creating a piece-winning threat of ours. So here it is not good for them if they capture this knight and allow us to capture their bishop, because now our rook is free. Also, it doesn't do anything if they capture this pawn, because it will only help us develop our dark square bishop, and then we would like to continue with something like developing our bishop, developing our queen somewhere and getting long castled, and it will be super good position for black. So what they should do, and what they usually do, is they move their bishop out of the way to h4, but we can continue with pawn to g4. What is this? g5. And now in this position they can capture with their knight our pawn, because once we capture, they capture this pawn and they still will be able to win our knight. So we would have to play something like bishop to e7. They can get this straight on, but in the end, in this position, here is where they like to play queen to a4 check. This time we don't have the move c6, because there is no queen that would guard our knight. So we would have to play knight back to c6. And after this they are happily grabbing this pawn on c4. We can develop our bishop. We are looking to get castled. So in this position, I believe bishop to b5 is the most played move. But you are just going to get castled and you are actually in a much better position. And if they even try to go for these tactics to remove the knight from defending this pawn, well, they will get cooked. If they do that, you just grab this bishop with your bishop, you allow the queen to capture on a7, and it doesn't do anything for them. You can even capture this pawn, and well, this check is just going to put their queen in the danger, because our rook is protected, and just have a look at all our pieces, going for the king in the future. So that's not good for them. Let's go back. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. If they don't go for this knight sacrifice, which is totally sound for them, then they are most likely to bring their bishop all the way to g3. And here you can have some fun with playing knight to d5. Because in this position, once again, the most played move is queen to a4 check. And this time, you are not going to care about this knight on a5. You are going to block this check with your bishop like you are a big noob, not seeing that you hung your knight. And if they capture it, then you go like, well, thanks for trapping your own queen. So this is the kind of fun that you can be having with the Bogoljubov defense. Anyways, guys, I think this video is getting a little too long, so if you want to have a look at some other variations which I didn't mention, you can have a look by yourself. You will find a study in the description of this video, and well, yeah, we will continue next time exploring some other deviations and branches of this super fun opening. Until then, have fun, take care, and bye.